Egypt just spent $1.1 billion building the world's largest museum. But the artifacts they want to display, they're locked in London, Paris, and Berlin, and Egypt is about to start a war to get them back. The Grand Egyptian Museum opened in November 2025 after 33 years of planning, political chaos, and construction delays. It sits 2 kilometers from the Pyramids of Giza, over 5.4 million square feet. Capacity for 100,000 artifacts, the largest museum dedicated to a single civilization on the planet. I'm talking about a building so massive it has its own conservation labs, research centers, and a grand staircase that gives you a panoramic view of the pyramids while you walk through 5,000 years of history. This isn't just a museum, it's a statement. But here's what nobody's talking about. The museum has space for 100,000 artifacts. Right now they have about 50,000. The rest, they're sitting in the British Museum, the Louvre, and museums across Europe and America. And Egypt isn't asking nicely anymore. They're launching the most aggressive repatriation campaign in modern history. And if they succeed, it's going to change everything about how we think about museums, colonialism, and who actually owns history. Let me show you what's at stake. Inside the Grand Egyptian Museum, 33 years in the making. Let's start with the museum itself, because you need to understand what Egypt just built. This project was announced in 1992. Think about that. The internet barely existed. The Soviet Union had just collapsed. And Egypt said, "We're going to build the greatest museum the world has ever seen." They held a worldwide design competition in 2002. Over 1,500 architects submitted proposals. The winners? Hennig & Peng architects from Ireland. Their design was brilliant. A massive wedge-shaped structure that radiates outward from the pyramids. The building is clad in luminous stone panels that glow at sunset, creating this visual bridge between ancient and modern Egypt. Construction began in 2005 and then 2011 hit. The Arab Spring, political upheaval, economic collapse. Construction stopped completely. For years, this half-finished museum sat there like a monument to broken promises. People started calling it Egypt's White Elephant, a billion-dollar project that would never open. But they kept going. By 2018, major milestones were being hit. By 2022, the structure was complete. In 2024, they did a soft opening. And in November 2025, they finally opened the doors to the public. Total cost? $1.1 billion. Most of it funded by Japanese loans and whatever the Egyptian government could scrape together. Now let's talk about what's inside. The grand entrance. You walk in and you're immediately hit with a 12-meter tall statue of Ramses II, not a replica. The actual statue moved from its original location and restored. The atrium is flooded with natural light from massive glass facades. The architecture is designed so that no matter where you stand, you can see the pyramids through the windows. The grand staircase. This is the centerpiece, a massive staircase that takes you through Egyptian history chronologically. As you climb, you move through dynasties: Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom. The artifacts are arranged in a grid system, east-west lines representing different time periods. It's not just a museum, it's a timeline you can walk through. The Tutankhamun collection. For the first time in history, the entire Tutankhamun collection is displayed in one place. Over 5,000 artifacts. His golden mask, his chariots, his jewelry, his sarcophagus. Before this, the collection was scattered across multiple museums in Egypt. Now, it's all here. Conservation labs. This is what separates the Grand Egyptian Museum from every other museum in Egypt. State-of-the-art conservation facilities, climate-controlled environments, advanced security systems, ultra-modern artifact preservation labs that rival anything in the British Museum or the Louvre. For decades, Western museums said, "We can't return these artifacts because Egypt doesn't have the infrastructure to protect them." Egypt just called their bluff. The foundation. Here's something most people don't know. The museum is built on a Nile sediment plateau. This area floods seasonally and sits in a seismic zone. The engineers used variable width strip footings and advanced BIM coordination to ensure this building can withstand earthquakes and flooding for the next 1,000 years. This isn't some rushed project, this is world-class engineering. But here's the problem. The empty halls. What's missing? The museum has space for 100,000 artifacts. They have 50,000. Walk through certain halls and you'll see plaques that say things like Rosetta Stone, currently held at the British Museum, London, or Bust of Nefertiti, currently held at the Neues Museum, Berlin. It's like walking through a crime scene where the evidence is still missing. And Egypt is done pretending this is okay. Over the past 5 years, they've repatriated over 5,000 artifacts from museums around the world. But those are the small ones, the fragments, the pieces nobody cares about. The big three, the ones that define Egyptian history, still locked away. Let me show you what Egypt is fighting for. The big three, the treasures they took. Number 1, the Rosetta Stone. This is the most famous Egyptian artifact on Earth. It's a black granite slab covered in 3 scripts: Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphics. Same message, 3 languages. Why does it matter? Because this stone unlocked the entire ancient Egyptian language. Before the Rosetta Stone was discovered in 1799, nobody could read hieroglyphs. It was a dead language. French soldiers found it during Napoleon's campaign in Egypt. But when the British defeated Napoleon, they took the stone as a spoil of war under the Treaty of Alexandria in 1801. It's been sitting in the British Museum ever since. Egypt has asked for it back multiple times. The British Museum says no every single time. Their argument? We acquired it legally. It's part of our collection. Millions of people visit the British Museum every year to see it. Egypt's argument? You took it during a war. It's not yours, it never was. Here's what makes this even more infuriating for Egypt. The Rosetta Stone isn't just an artifact, it's the key to understanding their entire civilization. Without it, we wouldn't be able to read the pyramids, the tombs, the temples, everything. And it's sitting in a glass case in London. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's most famous archaeologist, has been leading campaigns for years to get it back. He's filed petitions, he's gone to the media, he's put international pressure on the British Museum. Nothing has worked. The British Museum is protected by the British Museum Act of 1963, which legally prevents them from returning artifacts in their permanent collection. But here's the loophole: they can loan them. And that's what Egypt is pushing for now, a permanent loan. Basically, give it back, but we'll call it a loan so you don't have to admit you stole it. The British Museum hasn't agreed yet. Number 2, the bust of Nefertiti. If the Rosetta Stone is the most famous, the bust of Nefertiti is the most beautiful. This is a 3,300-year-old limestone and stucco sculpture of Queen Nefertiti. It's so perfectly preserved that when you look at it, it feels like she's staring back at you. It's in the Neues Museum in Berlin. German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt discovered it in 1912 during an excavation in Amarna. According to Egypt, he smuggled it out illegally by mislabeling it in the export documents. Germany says the export was legal and approved by Egyptian authorities at the time. The problem? The paperwork from 1912 is sketchy at best. Some documents are missing, others are vague. Egypt has been trying to get it back for over a century. In 2011, Zahi Hawass launched a massive public campaign. Petitions, media coverage, international pressure. Germany refused. In 2024, a new petition was launched with over 100,000 signatures demanding its return. Germany still refuses. Their argument? It's been in Germany for over 100 years. It's part of our cultural heritage now. Egypt's argument? It was never yours to begin with. Here's what's wild. The bust of Nefertiti is one of the most visited artifacts in Berlin. It drives tourism, it drives ticket sales, it's a cash cow. And Germany knows that if they return it, they lose all of that. Number 3, the Dendera Zodiac. This is the only complete ancient Egyptian circular zodiac in existence. It's a bas-relief carving from the ceiling of the Dendera temple, depicting the night sky as the ancient Egyptians saw it. Constellations, planets, the zodiac. It's in the Louvre in Paris. Here's how France got it. In 1821, French antiquarian Claude Lelorraine literally sawed it off the ceiling of the Dendera temple and shipped it to France. Not excavated, not discovered, sawed off. Egypt wants it back. France says it's part of their national collection. The Louvre's argument? We've preserved it for 200 years. If we hadn't taken it, it might have been destroyed. Egypt's argument? You vandalized our temple and stole a piece of our history. And here's the thing. The Dendera temple still exists. There's a replica of the zodiac on the ceiling now, but visitors know it's fake. Imagine if someone sawed the Mona Lisa out of its frame, took it to Egypt and said, "We're protecting it." France would declare war. But when it's Egyptian artifacts, it's called cultural preservation. The repatriation movement. The tide is turning. Here's what's changing. Over the past 5 years, Egypt has successfully repatriated over 5,000 artifacts. Let me give you some examples. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York. In 2019, the Met returned a gilded coffin of Nejamank, a high-ranking priest. Turns out the export documents were forged. The coffin was looted from Egypt in 2011 during the Arab Spring and smuggled out. The Met paid $4 million for it. When Egypt proved it was stolen, the Met had no choice but to return it. The Netherlands. In 2025, the Netherlands agreed to return a 3,500-year-old statue of a pharaoh from the Thutmose III dynasty. It had been in a Dutch museum for decades. Why did they return it? Because Egypt provided evidence that it was taken illegally during the colonial era. Princeton University. Princeton is in talks to return the Nakhla meteorite, which fell in Egypt in 1911. It's not technically an artifact, but Egypt considers it part of their natural heritage. So why is this happening now? 2 reasons. First, international norms are shifting. The UNESCO Convention of 1970 established new rules around cultural property. Anything taken after 1970 under questionable circumstances can be challenged. But here's the problem. Most of Egypt's artifacts were taken in the 1800s and early 1900s, before those rules existed. So legally, it's a grey area. But morally, it's pretty clear. Second, Egypt can now prove they have world-class preservation standards. For decades, Western museums used the same excuse. We're protecting these artifacts because Egypt doesn't have the infrastructure. The Grand Egyptian Museum just obliterated that argument. Climate-controlled environments, advanced conservation labs, security systems that rival Fort Knox. Egypt is saying, you can't use that excuse anymore. We're ready. Give them back. And it's working. Public opinion is shifting. More people are questioning why these artifacts are still in Western museums. Social media campaigns are going viral. Petitions are getting hundreds of thousands of signatures. The pressure is building. The controversy. Who really owns history? Now here's where it gets messy. Western museums argue that these artifacts are part of universal heritage. The British Museum's official position is, these artifacts belong to the world, not to any one country. By keeping them here, we're making them accessible to millions of people who might never visit Egypt. On the surface, that sounds reasonable, but let's break it down. First, the accessibility argument is BS. The British Museum gets about 6 million visitors per year. The Louvre gets about 9 million. You know how many people visit Egypt every year? Over 13 million. And with the Grand Egyptian Museum, that number is projected to double. So the idea that keeping artifacts in London or Paris makes them more accessible is just not true. Second, it's not about access, it's about money. The Rosetta Stone drives ticket sales. The bust of Nefertiti drives tourism to Berlin. The Dendera Zodiac is one of the Louvre's most popular exhibits. These artifacts are cash cows, and Western museums know that if they return them, they lose revenue. Third, the legal argument is a smokescreen. The British Museum Act of 1963 prevents the British Museum from returning artifacts in their permanent collection. But here's the thing. That law was written by the British government to protect British museums. It's not some international law, it's a law they made up to keep the stuff they took. And they can change it anytime they want. But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to talk about. A lot of Egyptians can't even afford to visit their own museum. The entry fee for Egyptians is £200 Egyptian pounds. For foreigners, it's £1,450. That might not sound like much, but the average Egyptian salary is around £6,000 per month. So for a family of 4, visiting the museum could cost £800. That's more than 10% of their monthly income. People are calling it a museum for tourists, not for Egyptians. The government says the pricing is necessary to maintain the facility and fund future projects. Critics say it's another example of Egypt prioritizing foreign money over its own people. And here's the irony. Egypt is fighting to bring artifacts back from Western museums so they can display them in a museum that most Egyptians can't afford to visit. It's a valid criticism, but it doesn't change the fact that those artifacts were taken illegally. The bigger picture. This isn't just about Egypt. Here's why this matters beyond Egypt. Greece wants the Parthenon marbles back from the British Museum. Nigeria wants the Benin bronzes back from museums across Europe. Ethiopia wants the Magdala treasures back from the UK. Iraq wants Mesopotamian artifacts back. This is happening everywhere, and the Grand Egyptian Museum is setting a precedent. If Egypt can prove they have the infrastructure, the expertise, and the resources to care for their own artifacts, then every other country can make the same argument. The era of Western museums hoarding the world's cultural treasures under the guise of protection is coming to an end. But it's not going to be easy. The British Museum alone holds over 100,000 Egyptian artifacts. Returning all of them would leave massive gaps in their collection. And let's be real, those artifacts drive ticket sales, they drive tourism, they drive revenue. So this isn't just a moral debate, it's an economic one. But here's what's undeniable. These artifacts were taken during colonialism. They were taken during wars. They were taken under circumstances that we now recognize as theft. And the countries they were taken from are saying, we want them back. The question is, will the world listen? What happens next? The long game. Egypt isn't backing down. Zahi Hawass and other Egyptologists are launching high-profile campaigns targeting the Rosetta Stone, the bust of Nefertiti, and the Dendera Zodiac. They're using social media, petitions, international pressure, media campaigns, and it's working. In 2024, a petition demanding the return of the Rosetta Stone got over 100,000 signatures in less than a month. Public opinion is shifting. More people are questioning why these artifacts are still in Western museums. But the museums aren't giving them up without a fight. The British Museum's official position is that they're legally bound by the British Museum Act of 1963. But here's the loophole. They can loan them. And that's what Egypt is pushing for now. Long-term loans that are essentially permanent returns, just without the legal headache. Some museums are open to it, others are digging in their heels. But here's what I think is going to happen. Within the next 10 years, at least one of the big three is coming back to Egypt. My bet? The Dendera Zodiac. France has been more open to repatriation than the UK or Germany, and the Dendera Zodiac is the least famous of the three, so returning it would generate less backlash. If France returns it, that opens the door for the others, and once one domino falls, the rest will follow. The Grand Egyptian Museum is more than just a building. It's a statement. Egypt is saying, we're ready. We're capable, and we're not asking anymore. We're demanding. Whether the world listens is another story. But one thing is clear, is that this fight is just getting started. And the outcome will reshape how we think about history, ownership, and who gets to tell the story of the past. Because here's the truth. History doesn't belong to the people who took it, it belongs to the people who lived it. We're committed to releasing 2 videos a week. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more visionary builds.